Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Splash Zone, where I give out my favorite NBA player props of the day. As for today, Wednesday, December 6th, I have 4 NBA player props for you guys to lock in, all 4 of which are of the plus money banger variety, which you gotta love. So make sure to watch the video and lock in these 4 plays with me. Before we can get into today's picks, I do need to do a recap from yesterday. Not one of our best days, but not horrible. We went 2-2 on our 4 picks, but because I did not have all plus money bangers, I ended the day slightly down 0.1 units. Basically broke even, slightly down. That brings our total profit on the year down to about 11.26 units with an ROI of 10.72%. Obviously, with an ROI over 10%, we are very happy with that, but let's hope we can have a winning day today. If you are not already, make sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel. And then, as I mentioned, comment on this video, like the video. That stuff helps me out a ton. And let's get into it. So play number 1 that we're going to go ahead and lock in here is in the 76ers versus Wizards game. And we're taking Joel Embiid, 35 plus points, plus 140 odds at FanDuel. So Embiid hasn't played since November 27th. He missed 2 games with an illness. And then most of the NBA had the 3 days off with the in-season tournament. So I like the fact that he's going to be coming into this game with pretty fresh legs. And Embiid, I mean, you don't need to talk about how good Embiid is in the regular season. This is not a playoff. This is a regular season prediction. But he's been cooking. And honestly, if you look at his stats, he's almost been playing better than the previous 3 years where he won MVP and then was MVP runner-up for 2 years. He's been great. His main line point total over under for this game is 32.5. He's cleared that number in 10 of 16 games this year. So if you wanted to be safer, take him at the main line, you could do that. Obviously, I pumped it up to 35 plus, so that's all we're going to track. He's also hit the 35 plus number in 5 games so far this year. And in general, his past 5 games, he scored 30 plus points in each of the past 5 games. The last game we did see Embiid play was against the Lakers, where he scored 30 points while also not playing the entire fourth quarter because they're blowing the Lakers out. Now, there's obviously a reason, or a possibility that they could blow out the Wizards tonight. Even with that, I still think he could get to 35 plus points. The reason why I like bumping him up to 35 plus points, A, is because of the rest that I mentioned, but B, is because of this matchup against the Wizards. The Wizards just have no hope of guarding Embiid. There's a very few number of centers that can hang with Embiid down low. The centers that can do that, he really struggles against because he does not have the threat of just posting them up. So yeah, he struggles in those matchups. That's not the matchup against the Wizards. They have nobody that can bang with him down low. These 2 teams played earlier in the year. Joel Embiid scored a season high 48 points, and he did that in 3 quarters of play because of a blowout. So yeah, even if it's a blowout and he only plays 3 quarters, he can obviously easily get to 35 plus points for us. In that game, he shot 17 of 25 from the field, and he was 14 of 14 from the line. Maybe he's not going to get close to 50 points in this one, but he should be able to dominate the Wizards, hopefully getting us to 35 plus points. And again, the Wizards are a train wreck, and their center rotation just has nobody that can hang with Embiid. Gafford has no hope. Embiid just put him in a blender last time these 2 teams played. And Embiid feasts on these kinds of matchups. If they don't have anybody who can hang with Embiid down low, they have no chance of stopping him. And that's what I think is going to happen tonight. Hopefully Embiid gets us to 35 plus points, catching our first play of the evening. Next up, and the next 3 are all going to be splash zone plays, meaning 3-point plays. First up, in the the Nuggets. In the Nuggets versus Clippers game, we're taking Paul George, 4 plus made 3-pointers, plus 160 odds at FanDuel. I love backing PG in this game. It's a big game between the Clippers and the Nuggets. And for the research, I isolated Paul George's stats, specifically looking at when James Harden joined the team, because obviously that's a massive stylistic change, adding James Harden to the lineup. And so James Harden has played 14 games with the Clippers. Paul George has made 4 or more 3-pointers in 7 of those 14 games. That's where the number 7 came from. So in 14 games, Paul George has hit this in exactly half. 4 plus made 3-pointers in half. But if you look a little bit closer, he actually missed it in the first 4 games that he played with Harden, which means that he's hit 4 plus made 3-pointers in 7 of the last 10. That includes a stretch where Paul George made 4 in 5 straight games. In that 5-game stretch, they played the Nuggets. Now, the last time these two teams played was recently, and it was a really weird game. The Nuggets won despite not having Jokic or Murray. The Clippers lost literally without the Nuggets having their two best players. And in that game, Paul George only attempted 4 3-pointers from deep. That's by far his lowest of the season, especially when you include the game prior. It was a weird 2-game stretch. So he attempted 4 against the Nuggets. The game prior to that, he only attempted 5. So 9 in a 2-game stretch is very, very low for Paul George, who previously before that stretch was averaging 9, 10, or excuse me, was shooting 9, 10, 8 from deep. So he was shooting a lot more. It was a weird blip. In the first game against the Nuggets, he attempted 11 3-pointers. That's more in line with what I'm expecting from Paul George in this one. So if he gets up 11 plus 3-pointers, hopefully he can get us to 4 plus made as our second play of the evening. Next up, this is in the Hornets versus Bulls game. That's why I said the Hornets earlier. We're looking at Brandon Miller, 3 plus made 3-pointers, plus 250 odds at FanDuel. Now, this one is definitely the spiciest from an odds perspective, but I really, really like this one. Looking at his splits on the entire year, it's kind of interesting for Brandon Miller. He has missed time, so he hasn't played the entire season, but still, his first game as an NBA player, he made 3. Then he went 9 straight games without making 3 again, and 7 straight in that span without even getting to 2. So he went 7 straight games where he only made 1 3-pointer or didn't make any. Since that 9-game stretch, he's been shooting a lot more and he's been cashing a lot more from deep. 6 games since that 9-game stretch, he has made 3 plus made 3-pointers in 3 of those 6 games. And I like the fact that his 3-point attempts are up in that stretch as well. So it's not like he's just going 3 for 3 every game. He's averaging over 5 3-point attempts in those 6 games. And he has some games where he's attempting 7 or he's attempting 8. And and LaMelo is going to be missing in this one. He's played 2 games without LaMelo, and he's made 3 plus made 3-pointers in 1 of those 2 games. He made 4 against the Knicks, and then he made 2 against the Timberwolves. The Timberwolves are a tough matchup, so I don't necessarily fault him for not getting to 3. Also, his main line over-under is 1.5, so he would have cashed that if he just took that. But the Timberwolves are a tough matchup. And that brings me to my favorite point and why I'm diving in on Brandon Miller. The matchup against the Bulls is an extremely juicy one when it comes to opponent 3-pointers, made, attempted, all that stuff. The Bulls allow the most made 3-pointers in the entire NBA. They allow the second most 3-point attempts against them, and they allow their opponents to shoot 37.5% from deep, which is the 7th lowest. So all in all, the Bulls are a very bad defense from deep. If you just look at props.cash, who rates matchups versus what stat you're looking at and the position the player plays, they rate this as the easiest matchup for shooting 4s when it comes to making 3-pointers. So for that reason, the fact that he has an easy matchup, the fact that he's been shooting more recently, I like Brandon Miller in this one. Hopefully he can come through for us, cashing our third play of the evening. And last up, fourth and final pick, Thunder versus Rockets game. We're taking Fred VanVleet, 4 plus made 3-pointers, plus 170 odds at FanDuel. So it's my last play of the evening. Another splash zone play where we're banking on a player to get wet from deep. This time going with Fred VanVleet, who, similar to Brandon Miller, also has a juicy matchup when it comes to their opponent's defense and 3-pointers made. So that's, I guess I should say, specific to Fred VanVleet, tongue twister, his position, which is a point guard. Oklahoma City generally does an okay job defending the 3-point line. They're below average, but they're not horrible. They allow the 19th most 3-pointers made in the NBA. So again, it's below average. It's not terrible, but against point guards is where they struggle. They allow the opposing point guard to make the 4th most 3-pointers made against them, specifically looking at that position. So of all teams guarding the point guard, Oklahoma City allows the 4th most made to point guards. And if you look at their recent games, the Thunder, 7 of the last 8 point guards against the Thunder have gone over their 3-pointer over-under, and that's just their main line. So 7 of 8 have gone over their main line, but I looked into that a little bit more. 4 of those 7 that went over by multiple 3-pointers. For example, Chris Paul had an over-under of 1.5. He made 4, and he did that in 2 separate games. So in 2 separate games, his 3-pointer over-under was 1.5, and he made 4. Jordan Goodwin had an over-under of 0.5. He made 3. Luka had an over-under of 3.5. He made 5. So Fred VanVleet's main line over-under is 2.5. It's heavily juiced towards the over, so there's really no value there. So that's why I wanted to look at, okay, how many do they allow their opponent to go even higher than what their main line over-under is? 4 of 8. It's pretty good. And Fred VanVleet, if you want to dive into him for a little bit, he's been pretty good for the Rockets, and he shoots a ton, which is another reason why I like this play. He's made 4 or more three-pointers in 7 of 16 games so far this year, and he's averaging over 8 three-point attempts per game, which is great. Now, looking at his last 3-game stretch, his attempts have gone down slightly in those 3 games, 5 attempts, 7 attempts, and another game with 7 attempts. Now, in one of those games, he did shoot 4 of 7, so obviously that would have cashed. But for this one, I'm expecting him to get a little bit closer to that 9, 10 three-point attempt that he had been averaging prior to this 3-game stretch. If he does that, I feel very confident that he can get to 4 made for us as our 4th and final pick of the evening. And that's all I got. 4 plays for you guys to lock in. 3 of them of the splash zone variety, banking on a player to get wet from deep. Another with Embiid getting 35 plus points. Also hoping it gets wet, just not quite from deep. So if you're riding with me on these picks, all we need is 2 of them to cash to be profitable. If we get all 4, we're going to be pretty rich. So let's hope for that. Appreciate everybody for watching. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff, and have a good one.